lacked the outright pace of rivals. In a season where fractions of a second determined outcomes, Hamilton's calm execution repeatedly turned potential damage into unexpected opportunity. His presence on the grid reminded everyone that experience, when matched with skill, remains one of the most potent weapons in motorsport. Hamilton's value to Mercedes extended beyond his race results. His technical feedback was instrumental in refining the W16's performance. Working closely with engineers, he identified weaknesses that could be addressed mid-season, from aerodynamic efficiency to tire management. His understanding of how to translate driver feel into actionable data accelerated development. While rivals focused on headline upgrades, Mercedes concentrated on incremental improvements that Hamilton could exploit immediately. His ability to adapt his driving style to suit evolving setups meant these changes delivered maximum impact. In several races, a small tweak to balance or suspension transformed the car's competitiveness, allowing him to challenge at the front. This symbiotic relationship between driver and engineering team revitalized Mercedes' approach. The car might not have been born a championship contender, but under Hamilton's influence, it evolved into a disruptive force capable of shaping race outcomes. In a sport where the driver is often only as good as the machinery, Hamilton's role as both competitor and developer made him uniquely dangerous to those chasing a perfect season. The 2025 season's early narrative was one of cinematic symmetry. Dominant champions, clear challengers, and a building climax towards a dramatic final showdown. Hamilton's defiance fractured that arc. By inserting himself into battles that weren't his to win, he altered the expected trajectory of the championship. Race after race, he prevented clean sweeps, denied comfortable podium lockouts, and forced unexpected strategic calls. The season became less about a single rivalry and more about an intricate web of competition. This unpredictability energized fans but unsettled teams, who found their carefully laid plans repeatedly disrupted. Hamilton thrived in this chaos, knowing that his legacy was already secure, freeing him to race without the constraints of expectation. In doing so, he denied the sport its neatly packaged Hollywood storyline and replaced it with something more authentic, a season where every race mattered, every point was contested, and no outcome was guaranteed until the checkered flag fell. Hamilton's 2025 campaign may not end with a championship, but its impact will be felt for years. By challenging the dominant narratives, he demonstrated that a driver's influence extends far beyond the standings. His ability to disrupt, inspire, and adapt proved that experience and determination can rival raw speed and cutting-edge machinery. For Mercedes, his season rekindled the competitive fire that had defined their glory years. For rivals, it was a reminder that no title fight is ever straightforward when Hamilton is on the grid. His performances added layers of complexity to what could have been a predictable year, ensuring that the story of 25 will be remembered not for its perfection, but for its unpredictability. In a sport often driven by machinery and circumstance, Hamilton once again proved that the human element, skill, strategy, and sheer willpower remains the ultimate wild card. The perfect Hollywood season never materialized, and perhaps that was the point. Reality, as Hamilton showed, can be far more compelling than fiction. The 2025 Formula One season was shaping up like a scriptwriter's dream, a perfect blend of dominance, rivalry, and redemption arcs. Multiple teams arrived with competitive packages, and storylines were emerging that seemed destined for a fairy tale ending. Red Bull's early pace hinted at another championship lockout. McLaren's resurgence brought fresh tension, and Ferrari had begun to close the gap. Yet amid this cinematic backdrop, Lewis Hamilton became the defining disruptor. Now at Mercedes for his final contracted season, Hamilton refused to simply play a background role in someone else's narrative. His performances, marked by bold strategy calls and relentless pace, began dismantling the perfect story arcs for others. Every podium finish, every overtaking masterclass, and every unexpected qualifying run forced rivals to adjust their scripts. In the paddock, whispers grew. Hamilton wasn't just chasing wins, he was shifting the balance of power. For fans expecting a clean, predictable Hollywood ending, his defiance injected chaos. And in Formula One, chaos often writes the most memorable chapters. Red Bull entered 2025 with the same air of dominance that had defined their previous campaigns. Max Verstappen looked unstoppable. The RB21 was an engineering masterpiece, and early results suggested another runaway season. However, Hamilton's intervention began earlier than expected. In key races, he disrupted Red Bull's rhythm by splitting strategies, forcing them into defensive decisions they weren't accustomed to making. His ability to qualify ahead of at least one Red Bull car became a psychological advantage, applying pressure from the very start of a weekend. On Sundays, his racecraft, particularly in wheel-to-wheel battles, unsettled Verstappen and Sergio Perez, breaking their clean sweeps. Even when Hamilton wasn't winning, his presence disrupted the expected podium order, reducing Red Bull's opportunity to extend their lead comfortably. This wasn't about sheer pace alone, it was calculated disruption. Hamilton's experience allowed him to see moments where others hesitated, exploiting them with precision. Red Bull's perfect run was no longer a given. The championship narrative was shifting, and Hamilton was the pivot around which the season's unpredictability began to revolve. Mercedes started the season under no illusions about the size of the challenge ahead. After years of playing catch-up, 2025 was intended as a building phase. Yet Hamilton's hunger reignited the team's competitive instincts. Strategy meetings began to take on a new intensity, with aggressive tire choices, undercuts, and risk-heavy pit windows designed to catch rivals off guard. This was not the conservative Mercedes of recent years. Engineers worked tirelessly on incremental upgrades, knowing Hamilton could maximize even the smallest gains. The W16 might not have been the outright fastest car, but it became the most unpredictable weapon in the field. Rivals struggled to anticipate Mercedes's next move, as Hamilton and the pit wall executed race plans with surgical precision. His feedback after every session pushed development in directions that directly targeted Red Bull's and McLaren's weaknesses. By mid-season, the Silver Arrows weren't just aiming for podiums. They were strategically positioning themselves to win the battles that mattered most. For the first time in years, the paddock realized Mercedes could no longer be dismissed as outsiders. Formula One is as much a mental game as it is a technical one, and Hamilton has long been a master of both. In 2025, his off-track influence became as impactful as his on-track performances. Every press conference carried subtle but pointed remarks, designed to unnerve rivals without ever crossing into open provocation. He praised competitors just enough to sound respectful while hinting at vulnerabilities in their strategies or cars. This approach shifted media narratives, often forcing other drivers to respond, and, in doing so, reveal more than they intended. His social media presence also played into the psychology. Carefully curated images and statements projected calm control, even after difficult weekends. These tactics weighed heavily on younger drivers, especially those new to title contention. In a sport where confidence can translate directly into lap time, Hamilton's mental warfare began to tilt the playing field. Red Bull's dominance, McLaren's charge, and Ferrari's ambitions all found themselves subtly influenced by the shadow of a driver who understood that the fight for a championship starts long before the lights go out. McLaren's rise in 2025 had been one of the season's biggest surprises. With a competitive package and two drivers hungry for success, they positioned themselves as Red Bull's main challengers. But Hamilton refused to let them enjoy a clean path to glory. His battles with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were some of the most intense wheel-to-wheel duels of the year, showcasing his willingness to defend hard and attack relentlessly, regardless of the risk. These encounters often disrupted McLaren's ability to execute their ideal race strategies, forcing them into reactive decisions. Hamilton's deep understanding of race dynamics meant he could anticipate McLaren's moves and counter them before they fully developed. Even when McLaren's car had superior pace, Hamilton's defensive skills ensured they had to fight for every point. His presence between McLaren and Red Bull in the results prevented the narrative from becoming a simple two-team battle. Instead, it evolved into a three-way chess match, where Hamilton's positioning on the board ensured neither of the main contenders could fully dictate the pace of the title fight. Ferrari entered 25 determined to convert potential into results. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz both delivered strong performances, but Hamilton became an unexpected obstacle. At circuits where Ferrari expected to dominate, Hamilton's pace disrupted their rhythm. Strategic gambles, like extending tire stints or pitting earlier than anticipated, often placed him in direct contention with the Scarlet cars. These interventions weren't always about overtakes. Sometimes holding track position at key moments forced Ferrari into suboptimal strategy calls. His ability to read the unfolding race meant that even in slower machinery, Hamilton found ways to influence Ferrari's outcome. By mid-season, frustration was growing within Maranello. They knew that to beat Red Bull, they first had to escape Hamilton's grasp, yet time and again he placed himself exactly where he could do the most damage to their ambitions. Ferrari's campaign wasn't derailed, but it was consistently slowed. For a team chasing its first title in years, Hamilton's interference proved that in Formula One, even the smallest disruptions can reshape a championship trajectory. In a grid filled with rising stars and aggressive young talents, Hamilton's experience set him apart. His 2025 performances were not built solely on raw speed, but on decades of accumulated racecraft, situational awareness, and adaptability. He understood when to attack, when to defend, and when to let a battle go to fight later. This discipline allowed him to make fewer mistakes under pressure, a trait that proved invaluable in close championship fights. Younger drivers often pushed too hard, risking tire degradation or penalties, while Hamilton preserved his resources for decisive moments. His deep knowledge of circuits, weather patterns, and car behavior meant he could adjust instantly to changing conditions. This adaptability kept him competitive even when Mercedes,